bombings, assassinations, attacks on U.S. and coalition forces in Afghanistan. The Obama administration says all these are the work of the Haqqani network. And after 2 years of pressure from both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has decided it should be declared a foreign terrorist organization, or FTO, allowing the U.S. to go after the Haqqani's global financial network. The designation will freeze the group's assets in U.S. banks, make it illegal for Americans to provide material assistance to them, and prevent members of the group from entering the United States. The administration had held off making the decision because it didn't want to derail peace talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government. It was also worried about putting more strain on its relationship with Pakistan, which in the past has been accused of providing safe harbor to the Haqqani network. But on Friday, both Pakistani and U.S. officials said this designation would not affect their joint efforts to fight extremist groups. Not mentioned, U.S. Staff Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. He's been held by the Haqqanis since 2009.
Release me, please. I'm begging you. Bring me home.
A spokesman for the group says the blacklisting will make life harder for Bergdahl. Analysts say, meantime, the group engages in a number of illicit activities, including the drug trade, worth an estimated $25 to $40 million.
If the Department of Defense, the CIA, law enforcement follows up on this with clear action against the financial infrastructure and the business, the many, many illicit businesses that help support the Haqqani network. Because this is a network that is as much like a mafia as it is a terrorist outfit.
It will take up to 10 days for the FTO order to take effect. The hope is that the U.S. can further stabilize Afghanistan and pressure U.S. allies, including Pakistan, to target the group. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, the State Department.
So what more do we know about the group? Well, the Haqqanis are a Pashtun tribe operating in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Its fighters are blamed by the U.S. for a series of high-profile attacks on American targets. Their armed network was set up during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan during the 1980s. The CIA, which was on the same side back then, accuses Pakistan's intelligence agency of supporting the Haqqanis. The group's also linked to the Taliban and accused of raising money through kidnapping and drug trafficking. Well, Robert Grenier is a former director of the CIA's Counter-Terrorism Center, as well as a former Islamabad station chief for the CIA. He says he doesn't think a fallout between the US and Pakistan is imminent.
I don't think so immediately. I mean, the Pakistanis have been very careful to say, look, this is an internal matter for the United States. And since they claim not to be providing any material support to the organization, that they, of course, are stating that this is not going to have any material effect on relations. The concern that I have, however, is for the future. One could easily foresee a situation in which the Haqqanis engage in a high-profile attack, say against a civilian target in Afghanistan, under circumstances where it is strongly suspected, at least, that they had some measure of official Pakistani support. That would put us out on a slippery slope and possibly lead us to the point where it would be very difficult for the U.S. to avoid designating Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism.
And you talk about the future there, Robert Grenier. I mean, a spokesperson for the Haqqani said that this means that the Americans are not serious about peace in Afghanistan. How will this then affect the prospect of peace and future talks, perhaps with the Taliban?
Well, I think this comment from the Haqqanis is somewhat disingenuous. The Haqqanis have not shown any real interest in serious negotiations for peace in Afghanistan. They would like to see the Americans leave. They'd like to see the regime in Kabul overthrown, and they would like to have their own share of power. But that said, at some point, it will be important to have talks with the Haqqanis. The U.S. officials have, in fact, had some level of talks with senior Haqqani officials in the past, and this latest step could make it more difficult for the U.S. to sustain those talks. It doesn't mean that they can't have talks, but it might make it more difficult for the Americans to facilitate those talks, particularly if it involves travel by senior Haqqani officials.